Alyssa, what happened yesterday?
Oh yeah, they were thinking that their thing was the tunnel was going to like.
Oh, and then
Like,
their mom
cave
came
in.
ttheir mom's Their mom's all like, we gotta do this fast. I have an idea. And they're all like, why did you change your mind? And it was because, you want to tell them, Alyssa? Because you were talking in prayer.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just tell. And because when she came back and was gonna go to her work, everyone's all like, I'm sorry, but you wrote notes to your husband, and I'm not sure you're ready. We could give you still the job, but you won't get paid that much. She's all like, she went down to the tunnel. Let's do this thing.
You got it, Laura. All right. So, we're on chapter 36.
Okay, look, it's clear.
You guys, so that they can, when I put back, they can hear it really well, okay? Mm-hmm. So if you need to say something, you can put it in the chat, okay? All right. Okay, chapter 36. We spent the remainder of the evening working on the tunnel. With Mama's help, we made far more progress than ever before. She suggested we concentrate our efforts on deepening the tunnel and not to worry about spreading out the dirt anymore. It was a good plan while you needed it, she said, but if the Grunters come back for another investigation, they'll find the tunnel anyway. So we piled the dirt up in the basement, similar to how we had done it at first. How to pack it down with the bucket so that more would fit into the same space and so that it wouldn't fall all over. While Fritz continued to build supports for the summer day, Mama dug and I hauled dirt. I hadn't thought she'd be as strong as Fritz, but she dug with a ferocity I've never seen before. This is the strength of a mother fighting for her children, she said. When you have children of your own, you will understand. I should have been here with you from the first day. I should have told you from the first day, I said. For the first time, possibly ever, my mother and I were on the same side of an argument. When we took a rest before curfew, Britt suggested Mama should return to the apartment and make noises to cover for our absence. If someone is listening, they need to think we're all home. All right, let me see something really quick. I can hear, you guys hear me echoing? Yeah, okay, all right, we're good. Okay, we should have told you from, when we took a rest shortly before curfew, Fritz suggested Mama should return to the apartment and make noises to cover for our absence. If someone is listening, they need to think we're all home. I won't leave you both here overnight. We'll get the door, then sleep here in the tunnel, Fritz said. That'll mean Gerta and I can start working first thing in the morning. Besides, we're in no greater danger here than we are at home. I doubted that was true. If they came for us at home, we'd probably be arrested. But if they found us here, well, we knew where we were. Still, Fritz was right about satisfying the microphones, so Mama reluctantly kissed each of us goodbye and said she would return in the morning. She also promised to bring us enough food for another day's work, which cheered me up considerably. Even though I knew we had almost nothing in the apartment, she was my mother, and if she said she would bring food, then food was coming. Fritz and I continued working until long past dark. Mama had run into a sandy patch of dirt, so it came apart easily and wasn't as heavy to haul away. When it was very late, we at last made the decision to go upstairs. Are you sure you want to go? Fritz asked. I was sure I didn't. If there was anything I had ever been so certain of in my life, it was that I didn't want to drag a door off the exposed top floor of this building. But it couldn't be Fritz who went. He was taller, and there was more of him to get caught in their searchlights. We went first to the main floor. I wasn't comfortable here since we could see from the back windows someone happened by, but we'd spent enough time here earlier today to know where it was safe to stand. It was the upper floor that worried me. From my view out Anna's window, I knew she could see this level if she happened to look, which meant any number of other people could too. It would be a bright moon tonight, but the moon hadn't yet risen. All the more reason to hurry and get this over with while I still had some darkness on my side. Obviously, the main thing to avoid was being in the view of the watchtower guards. There were always lights on the tower at night, but I figured if I could see the lights, then the guards shouldn't be able to see me. Be careful. It was a completely unnecessary thing for Fritz to say, but I was glad he said it anyway. I nodded and then started up the stairway to the upper floor. If I stayed against the far wall, I was in total shadow cast by the watchtower lights. A few glowing stars would help me see, but mostly I hoped my eyes would adjust soon. Dirt and small rocks littered the stairs. That meant they could be slippery, and we'd have to carry the door down when we were finished. Dragging would make too much noise, especially if it pushed rocks down with it. At the top of the stairs, a wide hole in the roof gave clear sight to the watchtower. Since the hole was much closer to me than to them, I figured it was easier for me to see out than for them to see in, and I prayed I was right. My urge was to hurry and get this over with, but I forced myself to move slowly. Slow would be harder for them to see. Slow kept me carefully thinking through every choice I made up here. The door was in the opposite corner from me, where I was crouched. Half of it remained in shadow, and the other half sat beneath the light of the stars. I patiently crept on all fours toward the tunnel door, instantly aware of how still and quiet the night was. Every creak in the floor seemed magnified, so I was sure they could hear me. My breath seemed to echo in the air. Even the pounding of my heart was a drum that their dogs could surely hear, if not the guards themselves. Despite all that, I soon reached the door and lifted it to test its weight. It was made of solid wood. Very good news, because it could withstand the weight of the dirt when we tried to stabilize the tunnel. But bad news for moving it. I would have to drag it to the stairs. I wasn't worried about my strength in moving the door. Day after day of hauling dirt had made me much stronger than I used to be, but a heavy door would make more noise along the floor and probably leave a noticeable trail of dirt behind, one I couldn't clear without getting out into the open. I tugged at the door, but it didn't budge. I couldn't figure out what the problem might be. It should have moved in my hands. Then, with a high-pitched whine, the watchtower light powered on, and I froze. There was no reason to panic yet. The lights always swooped around in the night, much like the paths of birds of prey, patrolling for anything on the ground that could be devoured. The light washed across the death strip and then up in the air. It shone through the broken-out windows above me, stealing too much of my shadow, but also revealing the problem with the door. A broken beam from the roof had fallen on the door, pinning it to the ground. I had to remove that beam. The watchtower lights swung in a pattern, 2 swoops over the ground to the south, where I was, then once through the air as it moved to the right, then 2 swoops to the ground on the north. While the light went north, the darkness returned. That was my chance to get the door. I used the moment now to dart forward, keeping my body low. By the time the light returned, I was closer to the broken beam, but safely back in the shadows. With the next round of darkness, I pushed at the beam, but only gave it one nudge before I had to withdraw again. When my next opportunity came, the beam wouldn't roll up first, and every shove caused a cracking sound that echoed through the quiet night. Determined to get it free, I pushed with every ounce of strength within me. Finally, it turned just enough to release the door. It took another several slow motion minutes to get back into my original shadow. Then, 1 centimeter at a time, I began pulling the door again. I dragged it through the darkness and hid while the light swept past. How ironic that I had been so critical of East Berlin for feeling darker than the West. Now, that very darkness was my only hope to complete this task. After I got the door into this total shadow, Fritz was there to help me carry it the rest of the way down the stairs. Only then did I feel safe enough to breathe again. With his help, we were soon back on the second level. I wanted to return to the upper floor and brush over the drag marks, but Fritz insisted it wasn't worth the risk. I agreed without protesting, not because I thought he was right, but because the idea of returning there turned my insides to jelly. That was as close as I ever wanted to get to being in the lights of the death strip. That's the end of the chapter. Ah, she got it. She got the door. Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Need another.
I know. Next time. Tomorrow I'll read it.
Can we just read the whole